Hi, I'm Jeff Van West, and I'm not a millennial. There'll be a support group for all of us after the presentation. It'll be held in the library. You know I'm not a millennial because I chose to look at a vision of the future by invoking a movie that was made before we ever stepped on the moon, looking at the 21st century. And you know, there's a hazard in looking forward. There's a hazard in predicting the future. We have these great visions of what the future is going to be, and usually when we get there, we're blisteringly wrong. Well, we're not always wrong.
Austin, we have a problem.
But that's okay. It's okay because even when you're wrong, if you have the momentum, if you have the energy to look forward, you find yourself in the parts that were mistakes, you end up actually being correct, but in ways you never dreamed of when you actually started down the path. What I want to do is I want you to come with me on a little trip, a little vision into the future. And if I have a tenth the creativity of a Kubrick or an Arthur C. Clarke, then I leave the world happy. So instead of going 33 years into the future, see, I can't even get the 33 to come up right. I need to do something that's a little more like 3.3 years into the future, right? Just about a tenth. So I want you to come along on this little trip. And we're going to go forward to Skyport, February 10th, 2016. That's 3.3 years from now, for those of you who are wondering. Because I'm kind of geeky, and I really should have a pocket protector here. But there you go. Oh, wait, I'm dating myself again. So in this vision of the future, the training clients will practically teach themselves. When they need help, it will be delivered just as they need it, from the system or from flight instructors who are seemingly omniscient about what's going on. And of course, all of this will be done in perfect compliance with the Airman Certification Standards and the blessing of the FAA. Now, right away, I know you out there are saying, yeah, right, 3.3 years for something from the FAA, that's never going to happen. Okay, but the other two parts about self-guided instruction and about getting the feedback you need from the environment you're in, now that could be something. But now, what's going to motivate somebody, right? What's going to motivate somebody to actually do this on their own without someone in the back? I used to fly with somebody in a Champ, help me work on my tailwheel skills. And I'd sit up front in the Champ, and he'd sit behind me with a little Bataka bat, which was like, you know, foam-covered bat. And every time I screwed something up in a turn, he'd be like, the feet! Boop, 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 boop. So what's going to motivate people? It's going to be the same thing that always motivates somebody, right? This always works. There'll be a pop quiz at noon. Silence. Of course, because that never works. But wait, maybe it kind of does. So here's the scenario. I want you to take a flight. You're a private pilot. Now, you're going to take a flight from San Marcos Airport. You're going to go up to Austin. You're going to land. You're going to shut down and pick up a friend at the FBO. Then you're going to fly down to Lockhart. You're going to land, and you're going to go get some of the best barbecue around. Right? Sounds like a great flight. On this flight, again, from a new pilot point of view, there are no less than 14 radio frequencies you need to move through in order to make it happen. And I know you're all sitting there like, 14. Here, I'll help you out. There they are. All right, I'm going to start the timer now. I want you to put them in order. I can see a couple people surreptitiously looking at their iPads. For all of you who expected for this quiz me to have paper on the table or under your seats, charts, that sort of thing, that whooshing sound That's the 21st century leaving us behind. Well, I don't have time for you to go through the whole quiz here, so I'm going to help you out because I know you want to know. We can't help ourselves but want to know, like, well, what are the frequencies? Well, what would that be? And before I show you, let's think about how such a question integrates things. In order to answer this, you got to start thinking about what kind of airspace am I going through? Who do I need to talk to? Who do I need to talk to next? When can I stop talking to somebody and start talking to somebody else? Where do I find that information? How do I dig it up? And in the end, this is what you might come up with. Bonus question asked me after this. There's another frequency you might want to write down and stick in there. Hold it till after the break. So suppose we go 3.3 years into the future, and before we have somebody go into a ground school program where they sit there and I explain this kind of airspace, that kind of airspace, this kind of airspace, you need this kind of permission, I give them this situation. And I say, we got to figure this out. And we let them walk through it, but along the way, we give them what support they need to come up with this possibility. Now, 3.3 years into the future, we don't stop there. We let them take that list, and we let them go out, and we let them actually try it. And as they're trying it, we help them along the way as needed. We give them the appropriate feedback. We allow them to actually try it out and fly it and go all the way through that situation, applying what they just learned. In fact, if we really do it right, 3.3 years from now, when they run into a roadblock, they're able to call up resources, hold the phone, I'm missing something here. And in a generation that is used to going and finding things out for themselves, if right there in the virtual world, in the cockpit that's real, we give them the resources to call up the things that they need, they have the resources to keep going. That is what can happen 3.3 years into the future. Now, when I say practically teaching yourself, I really want you to focus on that word practically. It's not practically in the sense of like almost teaching yourself, kind of teaching yourself. It's practically in the sense of in practice teaching yourself. Like I said, running into a roadblock, calling up information you need right there, and applying it. No, that didn't work. Calling up information, applying it. That worked, but not the way I expected. That worked. If I were to kind of spread this out, how this would work in theory, it's a cycle, right? I give someone a challenge, but what's key here is it is an appropriate level of challenge for where you are right now. It's just enough to make you stretch. And then I let them try. They go through a period of trial and error, trial and success. When they do run into a problem, I'm able to offer knowledge, offer resources, offer what they need to succeed. But remember, I didn't start with that. We started with challenge. I walked down the road into problem. Now I want resources, and I'm motivated to go get them. And then with those resources, there's success. And with success, there's reward. Psych! Did it. I was right. Feels good. I want to do it again. So it brings it right back around to challenge. I want to be challenged. Well, now the bar, because you've succeeded, moves up a little bit. Ooh. And the process repeats itself. Now, there's a word for this kind of learning. It's a 4-letter word in some places. including the dictionary. It's called game. He said the G word, game. But this really is, as Don pointed out, we have to get outside the box of what we think about as a game. This is a hot topic in learning theory, and I'm not going to quote tons of people here. These are some excellent books you might want to take a look at if you want to catch up on this thing. And for those of you who are like me, this one has cool cartoons in it, which makes it really easy to understand for those of us who aren't millennials. And yes, they're all available online. And yes, you can find videos of any of these people talking on YouTubes for all of you who are millennials and never going to read a book, right? But I want to pull out some of the bits of what we're talking about in terms of what we mean by a game, right? In some ways, this kind of immersive learning, the game, it's a voluntary attempt to overcome unnecessary obstacles. Now, I know some of you are saying right now, no, that's actually an IFR flight plan in the Northeast, right? But bear with me. A voluntary attempt, people have to want to do it. And they have to overcome an obstacle that's unnecessary? Yeah. That's part of the voluntary part. It's put there as a challenge. It's put there, see if you can do that. And there are components to this that are very important. They're critical to making it work. There are goals. There have to be rules. There has to be feedback. And like I said, there has to be voluntary participation. People have to do it because they want to do it. There has to be something else, too, in order for it to really qualify as a learning experience. That feedback has to be metered in such a way that it is practically useful. Again, practically meaning with your hands, with your mind, actually applying it in context, in practice. And there has to be tangible reward. Because if there isn't tangible reward, what many people will show you and talk about is that without tangible reward, the brain will often just dismiss something as unuseful, just out of hand. But we have amazing reward, as Don pointed out. We have incredibly complex interactions to try and master. We have dynamics inside our simulators that take an endless level of skill if we can manipulate that right, because you can always get a little better. And let's keep going just one more step. We have one of the most fantastic rewards possible. We can fly. And the message getting out is, you can fly too. You know, it's fascinating. I have a team of folks who are working with me trying to develop this stuff. And I really hope during this next day and a half you're going to get out there and take a look and get into what they're working on. But one of them was a flight sim guy for years. All sorts of flight sim time. Thousands of hours. He got his private pilot's license. He gets into an airplane for the first time, lifts off, and is like, I've been here 1,000 times before. But you know that. You understand that. So what I want to go forward from here is how we might do all that, all of that. So let's think about that cross-country flight, the one from San Marcos up to Austin and back. We're using that world, the interaction, to train something we used to train on the ground. Now, why is that important? Why does that really matter? Well, if I'm going to have you understand the concepts of radio frequencies, if I'm going to have you make the mistakes, how better to do it than to have you try it out in practice and then go and try it out in reality. But where could we go with this? What other things could we do? What if you were flying on that cross country and you had already, I knew in your training program, done some research on weather and METARs? You had done some research on pilot reports. Why did it come up that you had done some research on pilot report? In an earlier module that you had been training, you started hearing somebody filing a pilot report in the background. And at the end of the module, when you were done with this piece that you were working on, it prompted, did you hear this little bit? And we could play it back for you. That's a pilot report. You can ask for some of those. Later down the line, when you've got a situation and you're wondering about the weather ahead, you could ask for one. Furthermore, you can give them. Later on in a module where we're going cross-country, in my headset, I'm asked for one. 3.3 years from now, I could say, pilot report, pilot report. There's something about that. Cool. What was that? I go to my knee board, which is in there, pilot report. Stop the sim for a second. It's on an iPad, of course. Got it. I know what a pilot report is. I practiced that. And I'll cue my mic and talk back, and then they'll thank me. And then later, when we're doing the debriefing after the flight, I'll say, hey, check the weather right now in your automated debriefing, and I'll highlight, there's your pilot report. You just changed the world in one little way. What else could we do with this sort of thing? Could we do interactive avionics training? Could we do interactive weather training? What if we did something where you never flew at all? Taxiing. Could we help teach taxiing? Could we make learning runway signage a little more interesting? I don't know. We probably could. We could set up a situation, again, in a context. So here's the situation. You're going to head up to Boston, and you know that, and you're going to join somebody to do an angel flight, let's say. There are a lot of angel flights that go into Boston Logan. It's your buddy. It's your buddy who actually inspired you to go fly, and you're going to go visit. Now, I know that I could put into your training something to help you help your friend and learn along the way. You're going to have to taxi from the GA ramp out to the runway at one of the most daunting airports in the country, I think, in terms of taxiways. Whoever designed the roads in Boston also seemed to design Logan Airport. For those of you who don't know, Boston's roads were designed by cows. Literally, that's all the cow paths that went to Boston Common became the roads, and they took inspiration from this when they designed the airport. But in this situation, I can give you a complicated clearance. I can help you think about how you might carry it out. And then I can have you do it.
Cessna 7274 Hotel Boston ground. Runway 22 left, taxi via Bravo. November. Runway 15 left. Mike. November. Cross runway 15 right. Hold short. Runway 22 right.
Say again? Well, that's okay. Inside the simulation, inside the environment, inside with the resources you have, what if I helped you along the way? What if I let you go through it and even make your own mistakes?
Cessna 7274 Hotel, where are you going?
Oh. But I'll help you. We'll help
Try it
you.
again from your previous position on taxiway November, holding short of runway 22 left.
I really am teaching myself. See? Anything we do in our ground schools, outside the airplane, theoretically we do to have something in the plane, in the environment we're able to do. So there should be an opportunity for connection, for making that link. And if there's an opportunity for connection, there's something we can seize. There's something we can expand on. And because it's a virtual environment, we can add things to it we can manipulate the world in such a way to make the dynamic of interacting with it increasingly challenging. So you're always drawn to try and be a little bit better. But at the same time, we can supply the resources to help move you forward. So if you were having trouble with taxi, maybe we can call out the various items in the world for you. Move you back. Try it again. You get it. Make your mistakes here when you go on the real flight in the real world, that ultimate reward. I've been here 1,000 times. This is easy. That actually happened to me in a very real way. Actually, a friend and I, when we were heading down to Sun and Fun, and we had just started to come up. I had been working with these guys to just come up with an arrival to Sun and Fun, right? So that you could fly it out in simulation. And as we are approaching the Florida border, this other pilot and I in his Bonanza did what every well-prepared, self-respecting pilot would do. He reached behind the seat and said, well, I suppose we should look at the NOTAM now. And I said, well, I think it's monitor radar, some 124.75, and then proceed to water towers, and then 1,500 feet, left turn gear down, 100 knots, wag your wings, and then switch over to monitor tower 129. Went through the whole thing. He still had his hand behind the seat for the iPad. I said, well, that sounds about right. Because I had done it 100 times. But let's take the concept even further. We want to teach airspace. This is a difficult kind of concept to grab onto, right? This sort of inverted wedding cake, and we got this kind of thing. But in a virtual world, I could put down the airspace. I could have you fly through it. In that flight up to San Marcos, you're getting closer and closer. You've contacted Austin Approach. They haven't answered yet. As we get closer, materializing out of the blue, actually it would be materializing out of the blue and into the magenta, Class Charlie airspace. It's right there. See it? We don't have two-way radio communication yet. It's here. It's on your iPad. It's there. You have no excuse for not getting into it, right? Or for going in too early. But I can make the connection between the virtual world and the real world. Now, when we talk about this stuff and we talk about applying it, learning to talk on a radio, learning to move around an airport, learning to understand weather, maybe even for a weather scenario, if you're going to go pre-flight for one of your real flights, I can create all the weather materials, let you get a full briefing for a virtual flight. All of these items are potentially on the table, and 3.3 years from now, they'll just be common sense. People will say, yeah, of course. What, you couldn't do that? You couldn't pre-flight your virtual airplane, fly it, and then find out that one of the elevator hinges was binding? Boy, man, I found that out, and I couldn't turn right, and I had to come back around for the left traffic again and again and again and again to try and, I'm never going to make that mistake again. But part of the point is that these skills that we can work in an interactive environment on the ground, traditionally on the ground, bleed over into the cockpit. And then, of course, we can do the kinds of things that you're used to simulators doing, which is learning to fly. But integrated, interactive, and continuous. Now, we can also do some significant improvements, if you will, over here. We can supply similar kinds of resources, the kinds of resources you'd want in the cockpit. And truth be told, for those of you who are going, at this point, okay, but, you know, it's not necessarily millennials coming in the door. We've got them, but we've got this whole other class too. I'm going to take what Don said and go one step further. How many people in this room feel very comfortable using Google? If you didn't raise your hand, you're probably lying. Because what the other piece of evolution that has happened is that technology has done a retroactive training of the rest of us just to be able to keep up. And why are we so familiar with Google? Because it's useful. Because it's the oracle. Because when we want a piece of information, it's human nature to go, I want to go get it right now. So if we can do that 3.3 years from now with ground training, why can't we do that with flight training too? As a matter of fact, I'd like to go from this point forward and say, I don't think there's any real difference. I think it's one long integrated continuum. What happens in the ground, what happens in the air, what happens back on the ground in a nice continuous circle. So after you did, say, a steep turn, just to pick one out of the blue, I could give you some feedback. I can tell you what you did well. I can tell you what needed work. I can give you trends. I can focus in on where individual problems were. I can give you the option. 3.3 years from now, it'll be taken for granted that when I'm flying a sim and practicing a steep turn by myself, I can sit there and toggle on and off, help me out here. Give me feedback. All right, let me try it on my own. So what I'm saying is that if you come to Skyport 3.3 years from now, there won't be any ground school. And in fact, that there won't be any ground school probably anywhere that's using simulation really well. There will be a continuum of training. And it won't be linear. You won't have to start in one place and then move on to somewhere else. You'll have a set of tasks. And you'll be able to choose the things that need to happen for you next. But now I want to point out we don't want to create a situation, if you remember back early on, where someone is so frustrated they walk away. So part of making this work, part of giving people freedom to move, part of the brilliance of Google is you can go anywhere and from anywhere get what you need to go further. So if I was to create a system, be it for a maneuver in the sky or a concept on the ground, I create a story. I create a situation. I take you through. I give you a reason to move from point A to point B. I give you parameters that help you move through it. But on one side, I also give you the opportunity to dig deeper. So if it was something like, say, steep turns here, what could I do 3.3 years from now? You're having trouble with bank angle. I could see that repeatedly. Let's put the simulator set up in such a way that that's the only thing you have to do. I got the throttle. I got pitch. How many of you have tried this in the airplane, right? All the instructors out there? All right, you're having trouble with that 45. I can tell. Look, I'll hold the controls here, and you'll hold the control. Take all that away. You can learn just the bank angle. You can learn just timing for rolling out on a heading. You could learn just the interaction between pitch and power. And I can track all those, put them back into the system, help you move forward. On the other side, I'm going to dangle a challenge. You want to do steep turns? Can you do them in turbulence? Can you do them with visibilities of 4 miles? Could happen on your check ride. Well, 5 miles. I had to say that to see if someone would catch it. But I'm not going to let you go forward to those. I am going to put a little bar there because that's boss level. And you got to earn it. You got to earn it by completing the basic level. Yes, I can do a steep turn. Now bring it on. Give me a tough one. And then I've seen you do it. I know from the system that you can do a steep turn well. We're in the middle of a lesson on landings. And now I hear from the tower, Cessna 527 Hotel, immediate right 360 in the pattern. Give me 2 turns. Is that a steep turn? No. Is it an application of the concepts and skills in the real world tossed down as a challenge to you? Absolutely. That's the kind of integrated immersive training in 2016. Now, hopefully you're going, wow, how long till 2016, right? And I don't mean by the calendar. I mean, when is that all going to be done? I want to see it. Okay. This is where I get to invoke the Wizard of Oz. You remember the Wizard of Oz? The Scarecrow finally gets to see the wizard, and he says, I want brains. And the wizard says, I can't give you brains, but I can give you something just as good. I can give you a diploma. Well, here's our aviation equivalent. I want to learn to fly. I want to be a master of the sky. Well, I can't give you brains. But I can tell you that there are lots of pilots out there I know who had no brains at all. But they had something that you didn't have. They had an FAA certificate. And I can't give you that either. Or the epaulette. But I can give you tools to help move forward. So if we're going to answer, when will it be done? It's actually a 3-part answer. Now, January, and never. Well, what do I mean by that? That's not multiple choice. This is just multiple reality, right? Now, I keep talking about it, and I'm going to say it again. If you want to get a taste of what's happening in flight training, where we're going, how we're going to take immersive, interactive situations and make them part of the whole paradigm of what flight training is, go over there. And in fact, when you do, go see one of those guys. Raise your hands, guys. Joey Sipos, Brandon Seltz, Fred Zangood, Mike Singer, Ben Moore. These are the folks who've been working behind the scenes to change the world of flight training forever through interactive simulation. That screen that you see is up, ready right now. Where are we going with this? Most of those maneuvers that you might fly, they'll give you the score. They'll be a tool for flight instruction. That's available today. Same thing with that taxi challenge and that cross-country trip with airspace and frequencies. That's available too. Not quite as in-depth as it might be 3.3 years from now. But it's available now for you to get a sense of where it is all going. You can play that game, if you will, today. And I guarantee you, from my experience, if you do it here and now and then you go try and do it in reality, you will be that much closer to having it done right, to having it be comfortable, for mastering the challenge. And that, too, is a part of the interactive gaming culture that we are part of. Now, I keep using that word. I keep invoking game. And I want to reclaim that word that it's not a problem. This is a benefit. This is a feature. And the reason we make it so is that because we are working in the aviation world, we'll take the reality and bring it into the virtual environment. Would you hear that voice giving that clearance? In the taxi challenge, that's Bob Adalesi. He's a friend of mine. He's also a retired Boston controller, and you could probably hear it in his accent. When we developed this situation, we got his input. We got other controllers' input on other situations, simulations, environments we've created. These are for real. In fact, if you don't believe me about Bob Adelezi, if you fly into Boston and you take the ocean to Arrival, there's the Lezi intersection. That's Bob. So you cross Lezi. But I'll tell you, in the real world, don't cross Lezi. Bad idea. All right? The other thing that we're doing, these competitions. Try them out. They're happening right now, right here, for you to have an opportunity to work with. And what did I mean by January? Our goal is to develop these tools so that people can use them, so that people can use them in practice and give us feedback on how they work. Because the things that we can do right now, like giving you objective understanding of what your student is doing, yes or no, that's easier. The artificial intelligence to give the feedback, that's a little tougher. And right now I said 3.3 years, but you know, the pace of technology, it might be 3, might be 2.5, it might be much less. I don't know. But that's okay. Because I don't have to know. What I need is a process. So where does January come from? Starting next year, I want people to start using these tools and giving me feedback, giving us feedback, giving all of Redbird feedback and each other feedback. So if you're interested, if you're intrigued by what's happening out there, you need to come up and talk to us at a break or at the end of the day. Because I want your name, I want your email address, your YouTube channel, and no, I'm saying all those things so that we can stay in contact, moving forward. And the most important part of that is that moving forward towards the future, we will be wrong. Everything I've shown you will be wrong. But that's okay, because we've come full circle. Bring it on. The future of flight training isn't out there or out then. It's right here, right now. In this room, all of us together.